Yeah, okay, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Chris Elisara. I co-direct the WEA, the World Evangelical Alliance's Sustainability Center with Matthias Boning. The center is based in Bonn, and we do a lot of work trying to convene and encourage evangelicals and our faith-based partners to do work that's good in the world to protect and conserve our biodiversity, to tackle the problem of climate change, to do many things that we know that we should be doing as Christians and as people of faith to care for the planet that God created. And this presentation is a presentation that is going to use a couple of different formats. One is a couple of videos, and then me talking about the concepts and going over them again. There is a program that's been started at UN Habitat called SDG Cities, Sustainable Development Goal Cities. SDG Cities has a goal to reach 1,000 cities and help those cities to develop in a sustainable, ecological way. Those 1,000 cities will have an impact of over 1 billion people. So it's a pretty important program. And what's interesting about it, as you'll learn, it's a full ecosystem with measuring a city, getting data about a city, getting a city diagnostic, and then looking at that diagnostic and saying, here's where there's needs and here's where we want to improve our city. This is where we got to actually invest to get an outcome that's going to move the data in a direction that we want it to go in. So we understand the city, we get the diagnostic, we get our area we're going to do work in, and then we're going to do a plan that's going to move that indice in the direction we want it to go, and then we're going to finance it. And so this is what SDG Cities is all about. And there is a specific desired role for faith groups and faith organizations to be involved in SDG Cities. They call it an implementation window. There's a variety of implementation windows there, so finance folks can come in as partners as an implementation window, for example. But faiths are also an implementation window, and that's what we're going to learn about here in the next hour. I gave this presentation at the World Urban Forum in Poland in June, and that's when the world gathers at these World Urban Forums convened by UN Habitat every 2 years. So this was WUF 11 in Poland, and I gave this presentation there. And the presentation I'm duplicating here because I want more people to know about this opportunity. And when you know about this opportunity, then to start working with UN Habitat, to start working with us to develop this program called SDG Cities and the Faith Window. The first video is a welcome address from WUF 11 from the executive director of UN Habitat. And we just had a meeting with her. She's here at COP15. And it was a great meeting, again, to extend the relationship of UN Habitat with faith groups. So listen to what she is saying here very carefully, because she is extending a hand to faith groups. And we can join our hands with UN Habitat's hands to do some great things. And I'm going to play the video.
Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. As the Executive Director of UN Habitat, I would like to encourage you to promote more active involvement of faith-based organizations in urban development. You can be active partners to promote SDG cities implementation. You can also engage much needed faith-based investment and mobilize your networks. UN Habitat values, supports, and wants to strengthen the relationship between faith-based organizations and faith-based leaders and actors. We agree with the Singapore Declaration, which was produced by the religious leaders who gathered in Singapore in 2017 for the very first faith-based urban thinkers campus. It states that involvement and active participation of faith-based organizations and leaders is important for the success of the new urban agenda. Since an estimated 84% of the world's population lay claim to a religious identity, faith traditions will play a key role in shaping the social imaginations, mobilizing support, and contributing the resources needed to bring about the cities we need. The specific collaboration you are about to undertake, co-design how faith and SDG cities can effectively work together, serve as evidence of our mutual commitment to the common cause of achieving the SDGs and the new urban agenda. The outcomes of your work will have a direct impact on 1,000 cities and over 1 billion people. People in cities and communities all around the world need the work you do. They need you to be creative problem solvers and break through any obstacles and challenges, big and small, so SDG cities can fulfill its promise. I wish you well in your networking sessions and look forward to learning of the outcomes of your work. I also look forward to ongoing relationship building between UN Habitat and religious organizations, leaders, and actors. Thank you.
So the co-development, co-design of SDG Cities with Faith started in June, and with this encouragement from the Executive Director of UN Habitat, we continue to go forward to do this work together. So there's an opportunity for us to keep going further, stronger together. But what is SDG Cities? Let me now go to another video which will explain SDG Cities in a very simple but still complex and kind of wonky way. But I want to present this so that it's a place for us to have a conversation here to get to understand what SDG Cities is. So I'm just gonna do a little quickaroo here on the video. So 1 second.
Well, thanks, Chris, for giving me this opportunity to join you today and to talk a little bit about the SDG Cities program. So, SDG Cities is a global flagship initiative initiated by UN Habitat, and it seeks to establish a collaborative action across organizations and across all sorts of entities to unleash the potential of cities to accelerate sustainable development and to improve quality of life for all. And why do cities matter? Well, we see that the world is rapidly urbanizing. Now 55% of the world's population live in cities, and this will increase dramatically over the next decades. We also notice that 2/3 of the world of the SDGs are relevant to cities, and the cities also have an impact on the territories that surround them. So it's noted, therefore, that the battle for sustainable development will be won. All will be lost in cities, because on one hand, cities generate economy. Around 80% of the world's economy comes from cities, but on the other hand, cities are also churning out huge amounts of greenhouse gases. 70% of the world's greenhouse gases, 70% of the world's waste. But also there's a big challenge of inequality often associated with cities that need to be addressed. So on one hand, yes, the economic and creative potential of cities can really drive us towards the SDGs, but also if it's not managed well, cities could be problematic for achieving the SDGs. So the world came together in 2016 in Quito. 193 UN member states signed up to the new urban agenda at the Habitat 3 conference, and identified that how cities can drive the achievement of sustainable development requires effective policies. These policies need to then be translated into plans, into territorial plans, city plans, neighborhood plans, and this requires inclusive governance. The planning process to engage with communities, engage with stakeholders, women, youth, the business sector, for instance, elderly, disabled people, and that plans in themselves will not be implemented unless there can be infrastructure investment. So there needs to be infrastructure investment, and that needs to be equitably distributed, so without leaving anyone behind. And in order to invest in infrastructure, you need a revenue system. So the economy that's generated in cities needs to be then translated into a revenue stream that can support and maintain infrastructure continued investment. So what we're trying to do with SDG cities is to help cities in that process of going from data and having a good evidence base to strategic planning and engaging communities and stakeholders in that process, and then identifying the projects which are going to be the impactful projects to implement their strategies, and to get these projects financed so that they can be implemented. So it's a simple process from data to strategic planning, sometimes spatial planning, to identifying those impact projects and to connecting them to sources of finance. And at the same time, and then once they're financed, of course, they can then be implemented, and we can then see measurable impacts on the ground. But that requires local institutions that can be functioning well. So we're also looking at the functionality of the local institutions, particularly in areas of inclusive governance, planning, municipal finance, but also service delivery such as solid waste, water and sanitation, and mobility. And we've got quite a big ambition. We're trying to work across 1,000 cities and impact on 1 billion lives. And this is why we need partnerships. This is why it's so important that we do this as a collaborative action, because as a UN Habitat project, I don't think we can reach 1,000 cities alone. So let's look at data first. The first track is data. Many cities struggle with trying to get indicators around more than 200 SDG indicators, and have asked us, can you identify what are the core indicators? And of course, different UN agencies will have different views on that. So we've worked across the UN system to identify 72 core indicators derived from the SDG 11 objectives of safe, peaceful, inclusive, resilient and sustainable, and then the dimensions of sustainability, which is around economy, society, environment, culture and governance. And where these intersect, we've derived indicators from the SDGs, but also from the Paris Agreement on climate and Sendai Agreement on resilience, for example. So these represent a core of SDG of urban indicators. But for sure, if cities want to add indicators to that, that's also great. So we measure these indicators then through statistical means, but often statistical data is not available, so we look at spatial data as well, try to understand how different communities are served with infrastructure, social infrastructure, physical infrastructure, public spaces, public transport, etc., housing conditions. And sometimes there's a need to do a bit of a deep dive, so we go into communities and get data at the community level. But also in a lot of cities, you can get a lot from kind of scraping big data. And from these various data sources, we're able to generate a map of the city and understand the monitoring framework plays out in different communities. And we are able to understand the inequalities between communities, but also what the greatest needs, and not only what are the greatest needs, but where are they. So this is an important track, and from that we can sort of map our baseline of the city using the urban monitoring framework metadata. From that we go to strategic planning. We look at city development strategies, and we use that data to inform SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and from that visioning, and from that strategic objectives for the city. And at this point then we can issue a voluntary local review report where the city has taken stock of how they're doing on SDGs, and they can publish that globally. And then after that we do the strategic development plan, which is the sort of nitty-gritty of what's the actual priorities, and how they will be budgeted, how they will be implemented, and it's a more of a detailed process. Of course, city authorities don't do this alone. They engage stakeholders, communities in the entire process. So that plan is really owned by the city itself. So with the action plan, we then map, as we did with the baseline, where does the city want to be by 2030, and then when we compare that to the baseline, we then work out the gap between where the city is now and where it wants to be by 2030. And in this particular example, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the sort of environment space, improving the inclusiveness of culture, and also looking at a more safe and more inclusive economy. So once you have that, then we have to then translate that into actions. So that's what the strategic development plan does. It looks at what are the actions in terms of software, and this could be local regulations, could be bylaws, etc., and hardware, which could be infrastructure investments, say in affordable housing, in public space, in street lighting, whatever that might be. And so when you have the priority actions, of course they need to be implemented, and a bit later I'll talk about track 4, which looks at how to finance some of these things. Meanwhile, with track 3, we're looking at effective local institutions. So it's one thing to have a plan and to know what the city needs to invest in, but there needs to be strong institutions to make things happen. So we look at the planning, the governance, the revenue, and basic services. We have a diagnostic phase, and then based on the diagnostic, cities can then access training materials, training resources, and they can be linked to other cities that have common challenges, and they can be learning in learning communities. And then coming to the 4th track, this is the investment and impact. So through step 2, the strategic planning processes, we've identified what are the investment needs of the city. We can put these projects then on a portal, so globally this is shared with potential investors, and then importantly, these projects are then supported with an advisory facility which looks at the financeability of these projects and how to structure these projects for finance, and how to ensure that you're having the data and the information that investors need around de-risking, around rates of return, and these issues, but also the SDG qualities of these projects, and how to report on what these projects are delivering in terms of SDGs. And then we also then have the vehicles, investment vehicles. So once the projects are developed and prepared for finance, then there are vehicles then that put in the initial first loss investment, and through that process they're able to then crowd in a range of relevant investors to provide the sort of capital needed to make the project implemented. So that's the 4 tracks. We have data, strategic planning, institutional strengthening, and investment and impact. And then we want to recognize the efforts the city makes. So we have a certification which aligns to these 4 tracks. The silver certificate is basically showing that the city has political commitment to prioritizing SDGs. The gold shows that it has an evidence-based strategy, and The platinum then shows that the city has been strengthening its institutions, and then the diamond then demonstrates that the city is progressing towards impacting on the SDGs. It's delivering its plan, it's investing in these projects, and moving towards the achievement of SDGs. The delivery model, I mentioned before that we're trying to reach 1,000 cities and we only have 8 years left. So we've made a set of tools. These are all online. So for each of these tracks, the data, the strategic plan, the institutional capacity, etc., the investment facility, these are all kind of digitized. So they're accessible to cities all over the world, and where there's not good connectivity, we then work more in person with such cities. There are urban labs then, so these are sort of backstopping centres in each country, which services a group of cities, maybe at the country level or the regional level, and provides that sort of human expertise to work alongside those digital tools. And then we have global hubs, so for each of these tracks, the data track, the institutional capacity track, etc., certification, there are global hubs, or we're mobilizing at the moment global hubs that provides those sort of centers of excellence to improve the tools and to improve the processes and to keep things on track. And then, of course, the most importantly is partnerships. So going to scale requires us to work with several partners. So human rights, gender, social inclusion are incredibly important aspects, and it's needed to be mainstreamed through each of the processes. So because we've got sort of standard tools and standard processes, we've been able to mainstream these aspects effectively throughout the whole project cycle. When it comes to faith communities, we very much welcome working with faith communities. We believe that they're often aligned very well to the values of the SDGs, particularly the principle of leaving no one behind. They're often well placed at the grassroots level and have influence around their local communities. They're able then to work across networks of cities, networks of countries, and to learn from each other. Through their membership, they're well placed to advocate at all levels of government, but also across private and civil society sectors too. And also they're able to leverage their assets, their hard assets such as the facilities and meeting places, but also soft assets such as education programs, health programs, caregiving, volunteering, and social capital. So they're extremely well placed, I believe, to have that impact and leverage a lot towards the SDGs. And then importantly, there's often a culture of giving across all religions, and the need, the desire to give, to support the needs of the most vulnerable people. And I think through things like the city investment facility, there could be a channel for faith organizations to bring finance from maybe the institutional setup or from individual donors all the way then to local communities, local faith communities, where they can then see the impact directly of the finance. So we very much welcome working with faith communities. In the World Urban Forum, there'll be a session on this, and we really hope that that will help to promote the idea, and that we could very soon open a faith window for SDG cities. So just to recap, what's in it for whom? For cities, SDG cities helps them to accelerate the achievement of SDGs and to improve the quality of life for their residents. For faith, it provides the opportunity to live out faith-driven values and to channel human and financial capital in a way that's practical, collective, and impactful. For investors, SDG Cities provides a continuous pipeline of assessed, de-risked, verifiable investment opportunities worldwide, including in developing and emerging economies. And finally, for global development, SDG Cities harnesses the potential of urbanization, the potential of cities to accelerate the achievement of the global sustainable development goals. So please do join us, and thank you for listening to this presentation.
Wow, that's my colleague, David Aubrey, and we presented this at WOOF 10. What is your impression? Now that's a lot to take in, right, in 15 minutes, but any just straight out impressions that you have about this opportunity? Because I see it as a huge opportunity that is really not known yet, and my job is to really like get it known and bring partners in all aspects of the value chain to enable cities to be transformed in ways that is enabling people and the planet to thrive. So what's your impressions and questions? And then I'll just go through a couple of points I want to make, but you've been had a lot of information going this direction. I don't think you need to like engage. Actually, do this. Why don't you have a conversation next to each other? Why don't you just actually talk to each other and answer that question? What was your impression so that you're talking amongst yourselves? So just do that for 5 minutes, please. That's not really good on the internet, but hey, that's good for us here.
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna do.
Share on the mic.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, that's okay. When people share, we can give them a mic. They haven't come up.
involved in so much humanitarian work. It hasn't really, I mean, there's all the business. Very naturally, so I don't think they respond to us because police would come to us and say, these families, their children are involved in crime, they will see have important with them to say the or we'd see one pictures competing with people we know from our community. So then it's not a story for then that opened up a huge so Lexi makes people know these issues. Funding from the government, local council, people that are commissioning are not from the area, they're from outside, who then come in and deliver. So we naturally into this how we speak. I mean, we have to realize it. Finding a message, one step forward,
We've been having some great conversations. Keep going for another, 30 seconds a minute, but just wrap it up, and then we're going to come back here. But just wrap up the conversations. That'd be great.
Next question is, what are the free rights community? Community is not new. It's like the decision because people come back and make a point, and then you work towards it. A new person comes in, a new director, they make the same mistakes, and you bring up that report and say, hey, that's a really good idea. Let's make that possible. 30 years. When are you going to actually this continuity that we start doing it again?
Okay, we're going to come back together here. And this is really not good live streaming or very good TV because, how can you capture a conversation that's happening in the room here? So, apologize to the live streamers. Graham, you sent me a text, you're following. Thanks for being here. Maybe you've jumped out now because you weren't seeing anything. But anyway, we're going to keep going on now with our conversation. And is there anybody that wants to come and take the mic and just share a thought or two about this? And then I'm just going to get more into some of the details and some of the things that I think are really promising for us, real things that we can contribute to, really we can do. So anybody want to come and make a comment, make it short? Anybody want to say something from your conversations? Yeah. We'll do a comment first, and then we'll come back to a question. Is that okay? Anybody from the conversations want to make comments? Abdullah, they're pointing at you, dude. Yes, come on. Come on. So Abdullah had a conversation group here. He was a part of it, and he is from Birmingham. He is a community development worker at the Bahu Trust and a good friend. And I want you to share what your group is talking about.
Yeah, we've had a little conversation as a group, and I'm going to just say one little bit. So you may want to comment, pose some of the other questions that we raised. But it was about basically looking at how we can make this work and sustainable. And what we thought was one size does not fit all. And even breaking a city down into neighborhoods, you're going to get different complexities, different cultural complexities, different types of neighborhoods. So even to the point where within one city, you may not be able to kind of, develop the SDGs in one way. You'd have to break them. So that was really our point and our question. How do you go about kind of, developing a model that looks at, a sustainable kind of framework. And then also a kind of a mentoring program as well to follow that, so like a peer-to-peer mentoring. So what worked in one neighborhood, how do we then pass on that knowledge to another neighborhood?
Those are great comments and great thoughts, and really important. And I'm going to kind of share a little about my thoughts on that, but I'm going to add it to some other comments first. So I'm going to come back to you. Did you want to share something here? Here comes Janet Buckingham, who's the Director for Global Advocacy for the World Evangelical Alliance, and a Canadian.
Hi there. So in our group, I was sharing how our church had developed really good relationships with some of our city councilors and municipal people, and how it really was about the relationships that facilitate faith communities being able to make a difference. And then Cameron was talking about how his faith community had similar experiences with over time, solving problems with political people, but then they keep changing. And so then you're dealing with a new person and they don't know anything about where you've been before. And that's a real challenge, because a lot of this is relationship based. And then, especially when you're dealing with elected officials, they could well be gone after the next election. And then you feel like you're starting all over again.
Thank you. These are the problems. These are the problems we get when we have grassroots community activists, faith people on the front lines, seeing, how these things affect them. So that's great. You want to come and give your question, and then we'll just start working the conversation and some answers, at least attempt an answer to that. You introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kusumita Peterson from the Parliament of the World's Religions, and I live in New York City, and I'm also the chair of the board of the Interfaith Center of New York, and this looks like something that we could be part of, but my question is a question about agency. And I apologize because I came in a bit late. Who initiates this? Does someone go to the city government and say, let's do this, or are we going to set up a committee at the UN to reach out to cities around the world, or then there are mayors, there's a global council of mayors. What is the process for actually making it happen?
Good question again. So, SDG cities, it's got a goal of 1,000 cities. The way it's working right now is pilot. We've got a pilot study in the cities around the world. I think we've got about 50, don't quote me on this, 50 to 75 cities. And the start of it is, it's a program that UN Habitat brings to the city. So the city will initiate the program. The city will initiate the data analysis. And see, the theory of change here, the city will start collecting data, quantitative data and qualitative data. That data is really important. Remember to get a diagnostic of the city. And the global monitoring framework and those indices in those different SDG categories basically gives a state of the city, or let's just say a bodily check. If you went to your doctor and got a diagnostic, how healthy you are, that's what this data does. But that data then provides a window into how healthy that city is and what its needs are. And that then becomes, a next part of it is participatory planning. So once you have the diagnostic, then you have to do the strategic planning to get the planning solutions that are going to move the needle on the data, whatever that particular priority is. So people come in, communities come in at this particular juncture, looking at the data, ground truthing the data. Is this actually really true, what you're saying about cities, about communities, about their health, about their housing, about their economic well-being, about education. So there'll be some ground truthing on that, and then priorities. So, you have the data, but, who's going to set the priorities? Then you're going to get a program that you're going to build out and design, and then finance. Well, again, we can be involved in the priority setting, right? So there's, again, another place that faith groups, if we are aware of and active, can be engaged to make sure that the priorities are set properly. And that's the project development piece in here. The other piece is some of these cities need capacity building. Let me just go to the next graphic here. Because this is the circle, right? Where we have a data track, and I just kind of talk through that. And then we have the action planning track. That's the planning, the priority setting. These are the goals. These are the indices we want to work to improve. That's where we can be really involved in. And then if a city needs some capacity building in governance, inclusivity, or maybe even how to talk to a community and get their priorities, then we can help build that capacity up. And so there's a whole bunch of capacity things that are happening here. And remember, these are cities of all around the world. Africa, Asia, United States, and so on and so forth. But every city has some capacity building, probably areas that they can work on. So that as that is coming together, you can have a financeable project. If the project is not quite ready for financing, it's not really a project that is ready to make that, that's another capacity that we can help with, get that project to a fundable, investable project. And then while that's going on, investors are looking on. And this is another way that we, in this value chain as faiths, can also come to the table. Because some of the priorities we have, we can invest in, right? And we can be part of a blended capital stack with faith money, which is often and can be, and not all the time, can be more patient. It can be catalytic. It can have lower returns, and it also can de-risk other capital that can come in to a project. So when you stack that together and that blended, we have a possibility of really making an impact with faith-consistent investing in the SDG cities and bringing those assets and institutions, faith finance institutions, to the table here. And for those from the Catholic tradition, we know that just last week, a Catholic a Catholic investing, it's called, see, my Latin is not that great, Monsorum Bonum. It just came out from the Pontifical Academy of the Social Sciences that guides Catholics on how to do ethical investing. And it's a call to action for that. That is, again, building the capacity for the Catholics to get involved in SDG cities with their money, for example. And then the thing about that is, this is a circle, because when we say we're going to have these outcomes because we've planned this project and we've invested in this project, we have to monitor it and make sure that it's actually doing what it says it's intended to do. So we actually monitor it, and then we can actually course correct the design of it if need be, if it's not measuring out, and so on and so forth. So this is how this SDG Cities program works. And as we kind of mentioned, here's how faith communities can kind of see themselves working in this program. We have aligned values with this, right? we're placed at the grassroots, right? So that a project in Birmingham, north of Birmingham, is going to work for people in North Birmingham, but southern Birmingham, they might need something different, right? And we can do that. We can do that. This is not a one-size-fits-all. And a program in Birmingham is not the same as one in Ipswich. See, I'm just pulling out English city names that I way in the back there. So, and probably these are football names, you know. Anyway, so how was what you're doing? No. So this is the value that we can bring, right? In terms of making these programs and these projects bespoke and community led. We are also able to advocate at all levels of government, right? And from the top to the bottom to the middle, and grassroots. And we work in both private and civil society sectors. This is the power of faith communities. And we have assets, and we have this culture that wants the best. We want communities to thrive. We don't give up. We have been around a long time. We'll continue to be around a long time. Mosques, temples, churches are anchors in neighborhoods for the long haul. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years, 1,000 years. We have a long-term vested interest in the well-being of place and people. And so we can come to this program with all our strengths, all our assets, all our creativity, all our ingenuity, all our communities, and be a part. With that, I'm gonna just wrap it up unless there's any questions that people want. And look at that, it's 10 minutes to the actual end of this. And Alexandra, you want to come and say something? Alexandra, by the way, when she comes up here, she is within our faith community here. She's been monitoring. No, she's modest, I know, come on up. But I just want to say, she's been monitoring the negotiations here at the GBF. Make sure the GBF is going in the right direction and communicating to us so we can lend our voices in the right way. So thank you for your work. So here's your question.
Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you very much. So I didn't know much about UN Habitat and the work with cities, so I really came to learn, and that was very interesting. So I think I just had a question. I think in his presentation, at some point he mentioned his name. I don't remember. Aubrey?
Yeah, David Aubrey. Yeah.
He mentioned faith for SDG cities or something like that. So I was wondering. My question was that how do you envision maybe that what we discussed earlier as well, maybe the type of mentorship and mutual support from maybe like growing but organically, kind of this interface support to maybe, I guess, inspire work and projects where people would like to do something but they just don't know how to start, where to start. So that would be from the UN perspective, what you shared. And I was wondering if you envisioned something maybe from the faith integrated in there, but how you envision it. Anyway, it's great.
Yeah, thank you. So again, this is a new program, we're in pilots, and this is always the rub, right? You have an organization, even like the WEA, we want to do something, and we develop a program, and we say, hey, come and join our program. And then, WEA has churches, and they're developing something, and they want the WEA to come to them. So it's really like, how can we as faith communities and UN Habitat start to dance together, right? So to dance together, you got to put a dance floor for the dancing to happen. So where's the dance floor? The dance floor is going to come up at the Habitat Assembly in June. So the next step of having this conversation, really getting substantial work happening, was going to be at the Habitat Assembly in June. That's where the dance floor is going to be. And then we're going to bring our moves. I don't have moves. And they're going to bring their moves. They got moves. We just showed them to you. And we're going to start to see how we can dance, you know, the dance.
I'll bring the disco ball.
Okay. And Cameron's bringing the disco ball. And we're gonna figure that out. So it's like this group of people here that have been the Multi-Faith Biodiversity Coalition are gonna be working in working groups. We're gonna have a finance working group. We're gonna have other types of working groups. We're gonna do work, and we're gonna bring it to the dance floor in June. And then they're gonna bring their stuff, and we're gonna try to get a dance going together. And you know, we're just gonna keep walking and dancing forward. That's the best I can answer that question. Yep, because everybody wants to dance, but we've got to get it going. So, any other last questions? Great. Thanks for being here wherever you are, and this will be recut, re-edited, so that all the gaps are taken out, and the videos are, you know, on the television and so on and so forth. So look forward to that in the future. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for sitting this up.